This is Far Cry New Dawn. We're here on PlayStation 5 Pro. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is a direct continuation, well, also a little bit of a spin-off of Far Cry 5. Until now, the game has run as it has for a while, but we got a nice, fun surprise, what I'd call a next-gen, but like a current-gen update to the game, like Ubisoft is doing for a number of their games and experiences, which is a nice 60 FPS update. So we're going to be diving in, talking about that, and going over what the game is providing for the current platform, which is really exciting. So this is an experience that I would say you can play by itself if you want to, but I would highly recommend that you play Far Cry 5 beforehand, because as I said, this continues the events of, well, yeah, Far Cry 5, and it takes place like quite a bit afterwards, but it makes complete sense if you played that game, and yeah, it's a big thing here. So if you're not familiar with the like Far Cry series, starting with Far Cry 3, they started doing the spin-offs, and you know, we got Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, there was Primal, and this is Far Cry 5 spin-off. But the big thing here is like when the first game ends, basically this one picks up after like the bombs have dropped, as to say, and it's like a nuclear wasteland thing. It's actually a pretty fun experience. I quite enjoy it, and you know, it is something that I kind of recommend as like a fun little side adventure. It's very different from the other Far Cries because you are essentially like building up influence. You're taking over places, gathering resources, and you're fighting against this group of twins. It's like the highway kind of gang is what they are. They're the highwaymen. And they're these two twins, and essentially you're trying to deal with them and their problems that they're causing. And you kind of pick a male, female option for characters. You go in, and you're attempting to survive, take over pieces and places that might be familiar to you if you play Far Cry 5, and then, you know, deal with the twins. It's 17 years after a global nuclear catastrophe, and yeah, you're kind of doing that. It's neat. It's a fun little smaller thing. You play it alone, you can do it cooperatively with two players, and let's dive in and talk about the technical details. So this one is basically inheriting previous gen feature sets, so it's going to be the same on like the PlayStation 5. Like the Pro's not really getting anything massively on top of things, but yeah, basically it's 1620p and 60 FPS. There's the HDR support. So they've basically taken the PS5, or well, the PS4 Pro, yeah, settings, and they've just used it backwards, and it's a next-gen aware type update, right? So it's not like a proper full sort of thing. So if you play this on Series X, you actually get a native 4K resolution, whereas this is obviously a bit lower, but it's still a pretty good-looking game, and it's running pretty well. Anyways, these two, they got problems, blah, 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 they hate us. There's also streamer mode in this game, which is kind of nice to have. So you're battling your enemies for the resources of Hope County, and you go around the countryside, engaging with this new place. So this game also has a very different aesthetic that you probably didn't get from seeing the opening segment, which is quite dark, and that it's basically it's the apocalypse, but it's not like depressing. Well, it is really depressing, but it's not like all gray and dark and morbid. It's colorful and vibrant. It's kind of like a punky apocalypse. Okay, that's great. Thanks, lady. So we're just gonna get into the open world here, so you can actually see what I'm talking about. It's kind of in the backdrop there a little bit, but yeah, it's kind of a beautiful, tranquil environment. So it's kind of popping with color and detail and stuff like that. It's not the apocalypse you think it is. It's the same map as, I'm wondering if that's going to show up. No, it's not going to show up yet. It's the same map as Far Cry 5, but they've basically, you know, they've turned it into like an apocalyptic wasteland where you are gathering resources and weapons and tools, and you have to like craft ammo and stuff. It's basically like a little bit more survival, a little bit more building oriented kind of, well, not building, but you know what I mean, like taking over places and stuff kind of game. And it's neat. Like, it's Mad Max meets Far Cry is what I would say, with a sort of punk aesthetic that is reminiscent of, like, I think it's like Rage 2 kind of did that, where it was like a little bit more punky, but it's sort of like a vibe and a style that some things have been going for. Is it's like, it's apocalyptic, but it's got like a fun punk kind of color. So this game's also on the PlayStation side. It is like a little sort of like murkier and stuff too, not just due to resolution, but just due to the way they were like enabling the effects back in the day. But you know, getting a update here that is not only, you know, kind of giving us the resolution and the frame rate, I think that's fantastic. Because that was something that was interesting, is like on Xbox, originally they had FPS boost, so the FPS boost allowed Xbox to basically get the higher frame rate, but, you know, the resolution had to get tanked. Whereas this update is kind of like the best of both worlds. But they haven't, like, redone the world, if that makes sense. Like, you're still going to notice, like, the pop-in, it's still going to be that game, it's still going to be those specs, it's just giving you a higher frame rate. Which, honestly, to me, it's like a remaster without it being remastered. And obviously, there are those drawbacks, like I just mentioned, but I think in general, you will be pleased that you can come in and play this game at a higher frame rate. And I do think it's kind of fun. I think it's a neat game. I know it's not necessarily a vibe for everyone, the sort of style that they went with for this, but I think it's kind of enjoyable. It's a neat little apocalyptic thing that's not just, like, dark and miserable, necessarily. Like, again, it's an apocalypse, so it's kind of sad, and there's, like, these weird, grotesque, gruesome, mutated creatures, and, you know, that kind of stuff's neat. They definitely did some stuff with this one, like to try to make it a little bit different, but still leaning on Far Cry 5. And that's what I was saying, from like a narrative standpoint, you really should play Far Cry 5 first. You can easily jump in and play this game without having played Far Cry 5 at all. You can like pretend it's its own universe, but if you do play Far Cry 5 and you play this one, you'll be like, oh, okay. Because it's like, it does continue the story directly, but at the same time, I don't know how much people like care. But if you are someone that finished Far Cry 5 and you're like, oh wow, this is kind of what happens, because it was sort of like, for me, it was supposed to be, I think, a bit of an ambiguous ending. Is kind of what they were going for with the end of Far Cry 5, and this sort of was just like, oh no, this is definitely what happened, and you're like, oh, okay, interesting. You know, that's a choice and stuff, and yeah, I don't mind it. I'm always down for Far Cry. Like, I like to think of every Far Cry... What am I missing? Really? More of that stuff? I thought I had all the components I needed. I like to think of every Far Cry as basically its own sort of vibe, its own sort of, like, style and capsule of time and things like that. And, seriously? And that's what I find really fascinating about this series, is, like, they're always trying to do something, like, a little different for everything. Like, you know, one game you're doing like the main thing, you're out in the Himalayas, and then another game it's like a beachy tropical place, and then in the next game it's prehistoric times, and then it's apocalyptic wasteland, and then they're always different games. And these spin-offs are smaller sort of things, which is to me okay. Like, I would actually, it'd be kind of neat to have, I guess you would say, basically something like this expanded upon. Like an apocalyptic Far Cry might be even cooler if they went further with it. It's also just kind of like fine as it is. Like, I genuinely kind of enjoy it as like a fun little small one-off. Like I said, your mileage is going to vary into like how into the sort of concept you are, and if you're into it and playing Far Cry games. And then, of course, there's, like, all the hunting you can do, and, well, I don't know if you call it, like, full necessarily hunting type stuff, but, like, you know, you go and you can skin the stuff and gather resources and sell things for, like, other things, and you're fighting against a crew that's basically, that's where I was saying it's Mad Max meets kind of Far Cry, because you are basically fighting a bunch of people that are dressed up in motorcycle outfits. And... what? Oh, is it because I'm supposed to go this way? So yeah, you're fighting all these guys dressed up as like motorcycle people, and that's their cult aesthetic, and you're just kind of like, what is going on? And that's where the Mad Max of it comes in, is where it's just like they're sort of fighting over resources. And oh, I'm not used to actually taking damage in a Far Cry game. I forgot about her. She's my companion person that helps me out here. Gotta pop some pills now at higher frame rate. Yeah. This is the thing, it's kind of, like, it's zany, it's sort of weird. It just, again, reminds me of Rage 2 so much, where they went with, everything's kind of, like, purpley and pinkish and colorful and vibrant. It seems to be sort of a thing where it's like, do you call it, like, a punk rock kind of, thing? Where it's sort of the apocalyptic setup you're used to, but they go for, like, a different vibe, and I don't know, this is just doing something new. Which I liked, yeah. No, I like this game, it's fine. It's sort of like Far Cry, but we're going really quirky with it. Can't get rid of the stick for the saw blade thing, or... I can have a gun, or I can have a saw blade thing. It's kind of like... It's sort of hard to choose, because it's a gun, but the saw blade thing's kind of fun. I guess the saw blade thing was always a way to just kind of get access to this stuff. The idea is you can make, like, weapons, like, you can craft stuff, and, you know, it's still better off having different guns. And there's, like, weird rarities for guns and stuff, which is a little bizarre. You're basically just building up your arsenal and tools, and then going and fighting, and yeah, that's kind of the idea here. Like I said, it's usually actually like a pretty enjoyable time if you're into something a little different. I don't know if it'll be too bizarre for you if you're used to the other Far Cry stuff, but Far Cry usually is a bit of a quirky series. Oh wow, you got a shotgun thing. Like, when I think of Far Cry, it's usually got some serious stuff to it, but it's also usually, like, ridiculous at the same time, and it kind of lends itself well for that kind of thing, as being really, really silly and weird and over the top. I think that actually makes it more fun, to a degree, as the universe is, like, mature and serious and dark and violent, but also, like, you know, you can do some crazy stuff. That's the way. Does anyone have, like, a... I will take a shotgun over that, thank you very much. I'd love, like, an SMG or a regular kind of gun thing, but, you know, whatever. Yeah, I was a little disappointed they didn't do this with Far Cry 6. Like, Far Cry 6 got stuff in the game, but it didn't get, like, a spin-off. And I don't know if that was just because Far Cry 6 was too big. But I always loved these little games that did something a little differently. And these, like, pretty big kind of cinematics are going to be what they are, right?
There it is.
There it is. Hope County. That is really low bitrate. Install progress 94%. It's not even fully downloaded? What do you mean you can't install all the way? What's... Oh, come on! Alright, I had to download the rest of the game, which was like 2 seconds of files because, I don't know, reasons. Anyways, let's dive in. Now we get to enjoy the full scope of the open world. I have a craptacular shotgun. I have a companion. It's time to save society. The healing garden. Look, we have these roosters. We have guns. We've got cars. Throwable explosives. The world of Far Cry is now ours. Let the adventure begin. It's the Far Cry of us. It's the Far Cry of us. Like, I guess we could drive there. I don't know. This game's kind of neat too, though. From a point of view, you can, like, there's, like, always stuff going on in the world. Like, there's always lots of things that you, like, run into in that, which is kind of cool. Yeah. There's always like little events going on and like people that you run into and animals that attack you, and it's kind of cool to just take it in, honestly, just kind of explore and scavenge the world. I guess driving obviously would have been a lot faster because we are situated pretty far on the map. So like I was saying earlier, if you play Far Cry 5, it's the exact same map. This is what they do. They just like reuse the assets and then change things up. But that's not to say that they didn't do like massive work in this. Like, it would have been really cool back in the day to have done like a comparison video showing off Far Cry 5 versus Far Cry New Dawn, just seeing the changes in the environment, because it's the place you're maybe familiar with if you played that game. And it's just like, completely changed. Was she following me, or oh no, she's here. Okay, good, Carmina Rye. Let's actually take this conveniently placed motorcycle. Get in, gal. Let's ride. If you wanna go and take a ride with me, one woman in the side wheel. Why do I live this way? Hey, it must be the Far Cry. And there's like always a permanently Aurora Borealis kind of going on in the sky. It's kind of a cool, zany, apocalyptic world. It's not one you would necessarily expect. I can't remember how you kind of shoot when you're in this side here. I just threw an explosive over there. We need to save these people. Probably shouldn't shoot out the guy that's in the back. We could have hurt him really badly. Why did she get out over there? And then, of course, there's like some skill things and you get perks and stuff. You're welcome, dude. Where did my bike go? Okay, she got back in the bike. So would she get out, kill some people, get out of the bike? Now she's back in the bike. Get in the bike here. Young women, you know what I'm saying? They have no idea what they're doing or what they want to do. Ugh, did you see that little splatter there? Oh. Yeah, lots of activities in this game. As I said, it's a pretty cool experience. It's just a little smaller in scope, but still quite a lot of fun. It's got some weird twists, some weird turns, strange stuff going on, side activities, main missions, different enemies to take on, a bunch of creatures and stuff you can run into, random civilians still wandering about, which makes no sense at all. But yeah, it's just Mad Max, Far Cry, pink and purple and vibrant and colorful. And yeah, pretty radically neat experience if you've never enjoyed Far Cry. Although I don't know why you would jump into this one first. It is relatively self-contained if you think of it as just an apocalyptic Far Cry, but it literally does heavily lean on stuff that happened with, Far Cry 5. Like, the stories are intertwined with each other. It's neat, because you can kind of get away with it, but at the same time, it's also sort of like, it really does want you to have that working knowledge of things. It's an interesting concept. Yeah, definitely an interesting concept, but I hope you maybe give it a whirl now that there's, the element of it having the higher frame rate. I think that does a lot for it. There we go, it's all busted up, and you maybe have some fun with it, see some cool sights, hop about the weird pink flowers and stuff like that, get it mauled by the weird mutated mountain lion things, fight your way across different areas, taking over locations, and doing really the usual Far Cry things. Let's be real here. This is very much a typical Far Cry, and I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. Like, I like the series, it's fun and engaging, and there's always something new and different to go and do, and that's the fun thing with this franchise. Going to different locations, doing weird stuff, blowing stuff up, driving, flying, riding, slashing, assassinating, battling, meeting weird, crazy foes and stuff. I think the twins could have been a little bit more interesting as villains, but, it gets the job done, I'd say. It's a pretty compelling and decent Far Cry experience to have, and I'm sure you'll have a good time if you actually do decide to dive in and see what this has to offer in this little spin-off entry in the series for you.